The old man never ordered more than a single cup of black coffee, yet every morning he left the diner looking as if someone had given him another reason to stay alive. Then, without warning, 4 towering bodyguards stepped through the front door, followed by 2 sharply dressed lawyers carrying leather briefcases. Every customer froze. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. Coffee cups hovered in trembling hands. Everyone thought the old man had committed some terrible crime, or that he was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. But the truth hidden inside those briefcases would change one young waitress's life forever. Before we begin this unforgettable story, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone you love, and leave a comment if you believe that even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's destiny. Your support helps us continue bringing emotional stories that remind the world compassion still exists. Every morning before sunrise, the streets of Portland, Oregon, were wrapped in soft gray mist as people hurried toward another busy workday. Inside a small family diner called Maple Corner Cafe, 26-year-old waitress Grace Thompson tied her apron, filled coffee pots, wiped tables, and greeted strangers with a smile that often hid her own struggles. Life had never been easy for Grace. After losing both parents in a highway accident years earlier, she had raised her younger brother Noah while working 2 jobs. Bills piled up every month, the rent kept increasing, and Noah's college tuition seemed impossible to afford. Still, Grace refused to let hardship harden her heart. She believed every person deserved kindness, especially those the world had forgotten. Among her regular customers was an elderly man named Walter Brooks. He arrived every morning at exactly 6:30 wearing the same faded brown coat, carefully polished shoes, and a worn flat cap. His hands shook slightly whenever he reached for his coffee cup, and his quiet eyes carried the loneliness of someone who had watched everyone he loved disappear. Most customers barely noticed him, but Grace always welcomed him warmly, bringing fresh coffee before he even asked and placing a warm blueberry muffin beside his cup whenever she could quietly pay for it herself. Walter always tried to refuse, yet Grace simply smiled and walked away before he could argue. Weeks turned into months, and a gentle routine formed between them. Walter never shared much about his past, but Grace sensed there was deep pain hidden behind his silence. Sometimes she noticed him staring through the window for several minutes, watching families laugh together outside. Other mornings she found him carefully folding old newspaper clippings into his pocket before leaving. Grace never asked questions that might reopen old wounds. She simply treated him with the dignity every human being deserves. Unknown to everyone inside the diner, Walter had once been one of the wealthiest construction developers in the Pacific Northwest. Decades earlier he had built successful companies, donated millions to charities, and employed thousands of workers. But success came with painful sacrifices. His wife had passed away after a long illness, his only son had died in a tragic accident, and distant relatives had cared more about his fortune than his happiness. Betrayed repeatedly by people who claimed to love him, Walter slowly disappeared from public life, choosing to live quietly while allowing almost everyone to believe he had become nothing more than another forgotten old man. Grace never knew any of this. To her, Walter was simply a lonely gentleman who deserved warmth with his morning coffee. Sometimes she noticed his hands trembling in the cold, so she secretly turned the heater near his favorite booth slightly higher. During heavy rain, she walked him carefully to the sidewalk holding an umbrella over his head before rushing back inside soaked herself. When Walter struggled to button his coat because of arthritis, Grace gently helped without making him feel embarrassed. She expected nothing in return. For her, kindness was never an investment. It was simply who she had become. Then one icy December morning everything changed. Grace arrived at work expecting another ordinary shift. Walter was already sitting in his usual booth, quietly stirring his coffee. Just as she approached with his complimentary muffin, the cafe door opened with unusual force. 4 large men dressed in black suits entered first, scanning every corner of the room with professional precision. Behind them came 2 attorneys carrying expensive briefcases. The entire diner fell silent. Some customers quickly pulled out their phones while others whispered nervously. Even the owner stepped out from the kitchen, wondering whether police or federal agents had arrived. The bodyguards walked directly toward Walter. Grace's heart pounded. She feared someone was about to arrest the gentle old man she had known for nearly a year. Before anyone could react, one lawyer respectfully placed a folder on the table and quietly addressed Walter with obvious admiration. Every employee stared in disbelief. Walter slowly removed his old cap, smiled gently at Grace, and invited her to sit beside him. The lawyer explained that Walter had finally completed months of legal work regarding his estate. Medical tests had revealed his health was declining rapidly, and he wished to settle unfinished matters while he still could. Private investigators had been observing many people from his past, including relatives, former business partners, and caregivers. Most treated him according to what they believed he still owned. Only one person had consistently shown genuine compassion without expecting recognition, payment, or future reward. That person was Grace. Tears filled Grace's eyes as she struggled to understand why lawyers and bodyguards had come to a small diner just to see her. The attorney opened the briefcase and carefully revealed official documents. Walter had established a charitable foundation years earlier worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Rather than leaving everything to relatives who had ignored him for decades, he had decided to appoint Grace as the foundation's executive trustee, responsible for directing its mission of helping struggling families, elderly citizens, foster children, and hardworking students throughout the United States. Along with the position came a generous financial gift large enough to erase every debt Grace had ever carried and secure Noah's education forever. The entire cafe remained speechless. Grace immediately shook her head through tears. She insisted she had never helped Walter expecting money or rewards. Walter smiled warmly because that answer confirmed he had chosen the right person. Wealth, he explained, had surrounded him with people who wanted his fortune but ignored his humanity. Grace had seen an aging man instead of a bank account. She had restored something money could never buy, his faith that goodness still existed. News of Walter's decision quickly spread across the city. Television stations interviewed customers who had witnessed the emotional mourning. Many expected Grace to leave the diner forever and begin a luxurious new life. Instead, she continued working several mornings each week until the owner found enough staff. She believed loyalty mattered just as much as opportunity. Months later, Grace transformed Walter's foundation into one of the state's most respected charitable organizations. Hundreds of elderly people received warm meals, lonely veterans found companionship programs, struggling single parents received emergency housing assistance, and deserving students earned scholarships regardless of their financial background. Noah graduated from college without crushing debt and eventually joined the foundation to expand its community outreach. Every project carried one simple message: genuine kindness should never depend on someone's appearance, age, or social status. Walter passed away peacefully the following spring. Thousands attended his memorial service, but the most touching tribute came from ordinary people whose lives had been transformed because one waitress had offered coffee, conversation, dignity, and compassion to someone everyone else overlooked. Grace stood quietly holding the same worn flat cap Walter had worn every morning. She realized his greatest inheritance had never been money. It was the responsibility to keep kindness alive in a world often too busy to notice invisible people. If this story has touched your heart so far, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who still believes in kindness, and tell us where you're watching from. Every interaction helps these meaningful stories reach more hearts around the world. Special request: before this story ends, please leave a comment with the words, "Kindness always comes back." We would love to read your thoughts and remind others that compassion still changes lives. As the sun rose over Portland the morning after Walter's memorial, Grace unlocked the doors of Maple Corner Cafe one more time before heading to the foundation office. She placed a fresh blueberry muffin on Walter's favorite table, poured a cup of black coffee, and smiled through quiet tears. The booth remained empty, but his legacy filled every corner of the room. Every stranger who entered that diner afterward was welcomed with the same warmth Grace had always shown because she finally understood that we rarely know the battles hidden behind another person's eyes. Sometimes the smallest act, a warm meal, a gentle smile, an extra minute of patience, or a simple cup of coffee, becomes the miracle someone has been praying for. And somewhere, without us ever realizing it, kindness writes endings more beautiful than anything wealth alone could ever purchase.